phone down now. I'll put the phone down now.
Yeah, that's fine. I'll try and find it. That's
okay,
fine.
okay. So, hello, welcome to our very first Once Upon a Time Live. This is our Tea and Tales section. I'm hoping that Beck Underwood will be joining us very soon. Essentially, Once Upon a Time has been in our heads for about a year, probably, wanting to to reinvigorate our love and joy for teaching, because we have the most wonderful subjects in the world to teach, and we can be creative with everything we do. If we think a little bit outside the box and look at the value of story through everything we do. So Tea and Tales is really a very informal, just come and join us, come and have a little chat, come and see what we're talking about. Today is going to be about picture books in particular. So I have brought a whole host of picture books with me, and so has Bex, if she can join us soon. I'm praying that she can. And you will, I'm sure, have some family favourites, some that you love to look at with your own children or in your classroom. And I'm going to wave a few of my favourite ones here at you. This one was an absolute peach with my own children, The Snail and the Whale. I mean, you can't really go wrong with Julia Donaldson. She's just pretty amazing at all sorts of everything. And the value of picture and the value of image when we're looking at books at whatever age is just immense. It really builds all sorts of important skill sets, including visual literacy. I mean, you'll all be familiar with these ones. Where's Wally? And the visual literacy of finding Wally in all of that is really important, because it allows us to think about building resilience, building stamina, thinking about the value of actual quiet, calm time spent searching and building that cognitive ability to understand that in here somewhere is what I need. And actually, when you're looking at skills later on down the road, like inference, like pulling out information from a text, that's really important. And if you've managed to start with picture, then Wales Wally has got a really important message for us all to try and unpick and understand. This one, I can't see anybody commenting. I hope that means that you're not. But anyway, do try and join in if you can. I'm hoping that Bex might be there at some point. But this one is an absolute favourite as well. This is Jill Murphy, and anything she does is really, really memorable. It's a real memorable moment for our family, is this one about where she just can't get 5 minutes peace. And each image crafts the narrative in a beautiful way and adds value to the narrative. And when it comes to looking at picture book, from the tiniest times through to, you might well be a fan of autobiography or biography, and very often those capture image that are really mesmerising for us, because we can see the photos of people's lives, or we can see the maps or the ideas about where they are and what they're doing. And all of that builds that sort of multimodal learning for us, because it pulls us into a world of story through both visual and text. If you have a reluctant reader at home, I certainly do and did, then visual stimulus within books can be so helpful. Not only does it build in the joy, but it gives you a bit of breathing space. It allows a bit of white space, a bit of time to capture meaning. I think that's probably why most of our children are mad keen on things like Diary of a Wimpy Kid, which is that kind of hybrid between comic and text. It's almost that sort of middle ground, hinterland between one genre and another. And it allows that engagement to really build. And once you've got children on the journey, Mrs. Underwood's here, she's in the room. I want you to be able to join me. Why can't you join me? We need to work this one out, Bex. Once you've built that journey and started that journey of opening a book and looking at a book and finding pictures together, then that is in itself the way to get to some of the more challenging parts of the journey that our children are going to need when they get to all sorts of different points in schools, but much more importantly beyond that, and in other elements of their lives where literacy and visual literacy is going to be so important in their ability to progress and get on and have healthy, happy lives. I don't know if you've come across wordless books. This is one of my favourites, Tuesday. But there's also all sorts of other ones like Chalk. And where's my other favourite, which we all know and love, particularly at Christmas? Snowman. So I did a little bit of mugging up on wordless books because I know that I love them, and I know that they are fabulous in the classroom because they allow us to unpick storytelling. It just is the perfect platform for children to make their own stories. You know, this is the kind of taught for writing navigation about using the image to lead the story. Well, we've got some absolute classics out there like Tuesday, like The Snowman, and like Chalk, which I don't have a copy of, but that's a really lovely one. Who's that one by? Bill Thompson. It's where three children find a magical piece of chalk and it goes off on an adventure. And there are no words at all in those books. But they're incredibly valuable because they allow us to unpick a story and retell a story and bring a story to life in the words, using the vocabulary of the children themselves. But also, and I did a little bit of research here, it helps us build memory. So it encourages us to build memory retention by providing all those additional sensory cues. And there was some research done on this, and I will share it with you, to show that actually this is really an important element of our literary journey. So there's something called dual coding theory, which suggests that if you've got two distinct forms, i.e. verbal and visual, or textual and visual, then we're able much more readily to process that information and store it. And we store that in those two distinctive areas, verbal and visual. And that picture-based learning builds memory retention compared with if you're just looking at information in one format. So if it was just the written word, we might well retain it. If it's the written word coupled with visual cues or clues, then the chances are that we're going to retain it much more readily. And there was a lot of research done, particularly in early years in Key Stage 1, where looking at picture books together, children who'd been given just a text or just being read to without any images did not remember the story as well as when it was attached to an image. So it builds retention of memory. And we know from some ed psych work, educational psychology work, that if you have diagrams and graphs and maps in particular, then that really builds memory as well. And if you've come across Cressida Cowell, the wonderful author of How to Train Your Dragon and much, much more, she really advocates map work. She really starts most of her work, most of her books, with a map. And to quote her, if you pop over to her website, she's got a wonderful website full of resources. She says a great example of this and where her love of this stemmed from is Treasure Island. And apparently Robert Louis Stevenson said that when he started drawing the map, the pirates began crawling out of the map. Long John Silver had a cutlass between his teeth. And that was just how the journey started, was with a map. And she certainly advocates starting story writing with a map. It's a great place to start. And so this is a sort of a lovely hybrid world, really, where you bring in the storyteller within us and the reader within us with a map. And that's the visual cue that we need to pop out with ideas. But also it helps us as a reader, and that's one of the reasons Cressida Cowell always includes them, is because you get that idea about what the world is going to be that you're about to explore. So, for instance, she says, maps help me make my worlds more believable. I know, for example, how my characters can get from Hooligan Village to Wild Dragon Cliff. And I can convey an impression of the landscape with the names. So Unlandable Cove, we're not really going to want to get our boats onto Unlandable Cove. It's going to be pretty rocky, pretty unfriendly place. So if you have books with maps in, like Treasure Island, or like any of Cressida Cowell's books. They're a lovely place to sit and talk to your children, to pull out the storyteller in them and the reader in them. So that would be one of my top tips, looking at maths. Another absolute favourite, sticking with Raymond Briggs, the Snowman author. I don't know if you've come across the Puddle Man. Puddle Man is actually a very, very emotionally literate book, and has a huge depth to it, and I could quite easily use lots of the themes here with my A-level classes or with early years. There's so much to get from this book, as you might imagine, given the author is Raymond Briggs. And it is very much written in the Raymond Briggs style. If you've come across Where the Wind Blows, which is about the fallout after a nuclear bomb has landed, then this is very similar in its style of presentation. So you've got the images there, beautiful images, and the premise is that the Puddle Man collects puddles, and along the way he meets this little boy who is on a very emotional journey of his own, and the depth of the narrative is explored through their relationship and the collection of puddles, and it works on so many levels. But the images threaded throughout are not just incredibly beautiful and really evocative, they bring out so much and so much emotion, but without them the narrative is really only a small amount of what it is with the images. It's really, really stunning. And it's all written in speech bubble, so we've got the direct speech and we're in there with them and we can hear them and we can see them. And that element really gives us that kind of comprehension aid, I suppose, to understanding what's going on and making sure we've sort of reinforced with all those context clues. So the context of imagery in books is hugely important. So if you think of the colourways that are used here, it's almost, once you're getting up into GCSE time, we're looking at pathetic fallacy. It's almost the pathetic fallacy coming through in the imagery of a book, where the colours represent what we're about to encounter. So we've got quite subdued, quite muted colours the whole way through, apart from the little boy's red jumper and the Puddle Man's red gloves. And there are layers of nuance behind those colours and the choices that have been made there. So the context clues that the images provide are just brilliant. Okay, what else do I want to tell you about? This one. If Bex was here now next to me, she'd be going, yes, that one, I love that one. So The Owl Who's Afraid of the Dark. Just beautiful, beautiful story. And we've moved on to a littler, it's not a picture book per se, but threaded throughout, we've got visual clues about what is happening. We've got little suggestions. And it's so helpful as a hook. Yes, plop, love that one. To pull you in. Is what the author is illustrating what's in my head? Or is it different? And that's a conversation in itself. Does Plop look like that when I close my eyes and I listen to the story? Or is Plop popping out as a little bit different? He's a bit fuzzier here in this one than I was imagining. So there's an interesting connection between what you see and what the author has used as an illustration. And the minute we've got that sort of, moving on a stage in terms of literary demands, but we've still got the pictures, there's a safety in that. And to my mind, we take pictures out of books far too early, far too young. And I think that possibly is one of the reasons we love biography and autobiography so much, because we've almost always got in there pictures to help us understand the stories that we're being told. And let's put more pictures in books, I say. Here we go. Here's an autobiography, very famous one. I've used this with Year 8, I've used this with Year 6. There's lots to take from this one. If you don't know this book, jump in and find it because it's really lovely. There's a brilliant description in this autobiography of his time in a sweet shop with the sweet shop seller that he was not a fan of. But throughout here we've got the photographs of key events and places he went. Magic Island, visit to the doctor, sort of imagery representation of the written word in his own hand. And all of that is really helpful in pulling us into the story, pulling us in and giving us the reality of what it is he's describing. Now, being Roald Dahl, of course, he describes all his real events, you know, it's a biography of his life, in such a fictitious sounding way. You know, the visit to the sweet shop is probably one of my favourite sections in here. And the descriptions of character are uniquely Dahl, of course. But it allows us in a window into his world, and the use of image in there is really to be celebrated. So if you have a reluctant reader, if you have maybe children who are finding just text heavy books a bit much, give them a bit of reading space, give them a bit of light relief, and find books, some of the ones I'm suggesting perhaps, or ones that you've got yourself. Find some books that have got more images in them to help them, to give them a helping hand through the story, but also to give you that lovely connection and talking point. If you don't perhaps know the story, then the images that are being shared are a lovely way to connect with your child as you're reading together. Okay, I'm going to finish up with two more of my family favourites. This one, absolute joy reading to my children when they were little, where the earliest literacy experiences are so hugely vital, then image has a hugely important part to play, doesn't it? So it builds vocabulary first and foremost. It's such a great vocabulary builder. Each peach, pear, plum, I spy Tom Thumb. What a fun game to find Tom Thumb in the tree. And the skills and the ideas that we learn from this, we pull through into later life, and it helps us through the key stages with that sort of visual literacy and inference, and looking for skills and looking for information in the text, because that's what we do with the pictures. We're trying to spy the three bears. Where are they? Can you see them? All of those really fundamental, beautiful skills that we can teach and cuddle up with our children translate so well into later literacy for our children. So that one is an absolute favourite. And if you've got little ones around, treat yourself. It's a joy. And there we go. Let's finish up with Pippi. Pippi Longstocking, with illustrations by the very wonderful Lauren Child, who of course is the Charlie and Lola. And is she still the Children's Laureate? She was the Children's Laureate for a while. And you'll find all sorts of different versions of Pippi Longstocking books. Some of them are entirely text. Others of them, like this one, have huge amounts of image built throughout. And I would always advocate for every reader, give them some light and shade. If they are absolutely roaring away with reading, fantastic. Give them some with some images in as well, whether that's biography or an autobiography, whether that is a classic. You might find Railway Children, you might find Treasure Island. All of those classics come with, if you look carefully, come with the option that you can get one with pictures included. And we know that in terms of memory, in terms of vocabulary building, in terms of that multimodal learning, which triggers the areas of the brain more efficiently, because we've got a layered modality in terms of what we're looking at, visual and text. In terms of building context clues, picture is really, really very helpful. So I would really advocate that we do as much as we can to include picture in books for as long as ever we can. There's another lovely one. Bex would have had so much to say as well, and she's the early years expert. So next time we do this, we'll get Bex to host the next one, and I'll try and join in on that one, because this is, I hope, between the two of us, we will manage to get a sort of really great span between early years up to Key Stage 5, because between us both we cover every key stage. So thank you for joining me. Thank you for joining us. Mrs. Underwood has been... What do you mean, really? She's saying, really, you want me to host the next one? That would be lovely. Anyway, I will love and leave you all. Thank you so much for those who joined. Hopefully if you didn't join, you'll be able to catch up a bit later. We'll pick out the bits that we think are the most useful from this, and we'll share those as little bits to catch up with later. But thank you for joining me. And that was Tea and Tales. There's my cup of tea. You heard lots of tales, and we'll see you in 2 weeks for the next one. End live video.